So, good evening, everybody. And once again, we are back with this day 5 of Civil's Daily Answer Wars Initiative and CD Warzone Prime. So, again, in the morning, a question was given to you guys for writing your answers, and I think all of you have participated quite well and posted your answers in the Telegram group. I have gone through some of the answers, and again, we will be discussing some of those in this session. But first, we will discuss the question itself and then take some of your doubts and then go on to check out the evaluation and feedback process, how it is done, and how what all improvements we can make in the answer writing. Also, there have been a good number of peer reviews, and I really like the way you are participating in this, and this also motivates us to keep posting questions and keep helping you in your endeavor to improve this answer writing process. So first, let us start with the question for today. Good evening, Harji. And the question was pretty simple today, like it did not have some very difficult keywords. The question was about biotech, and we had not taken a question from science and tech till today. So I decided to go into this science and technology topic because one or two questions every year in GS3 comes from this topic, and especially like the topics that are mentioned in the syllabus exclusively are quite important. For example, nanotechnology, biotechnology, and all these are all mentioned in the syllabus itself. So these are pretty important topics. So the question was based on biotech today. The question was biotechnology is often seen as a revolutionary intervention, but the applications of biotechnology have had mixed socio-economic implications, and we needed to examine this statement. Now, this question in the question itself, they had made it pretty clear that the biotechnology as a tech had mixed socio-economic implications. Now, instead of giving this mixed socio-economic implications, if they had given us something like it is a revolutionary intervention and there are a lot many applications and critically discuss or critically examine or discuss, then you yourself had to understand that we needed to write both the positives and negatives of the applications of biotechnology. But in this question, it was pretty clear, as they had in the question very clearly mentioned that this new applications of biotech have mixed socio-economic implications. So we needed to write both the positive socio-economic implications and the negative socio-economic implications, and that was pretty much of the answer. Like if introduction, conclusion, and the body consisting of both the positive and negative socio-economic implications, I think that was fine for this answer. So let us start the answer. Like in the introduction, what we could have done is like first we could have just defined this biotechnology. So biotechnology is the appropriation of natural resources, living systems, and organisms to develop uh, products with enhanced qualities and applications. Now, if you did not want to remember this definition, I will make it a bit simple for you guys. Like you could have just broke this word. Biotechnology is basically biology plus technology. So that you could have mentioned and then gone on to explain your own definition about biotechnology. So appropriation of natural resources, living systems, and organisms to develop products with enhanced qualities and applications. So that was pretty much the definition of biotech. Next, I have talked about some of its broad applications, like it has revolutionized the fields of agriculture, energy, environment conservation, etc., generating huge socio-economic dividends for the people. So this is basically a linking statement. I have just defined biotech, and I want to show the examiner that what is going to follow. So I have talked about it having huge socio-economic dividends. So it clearly indicates that I'm going to talk about this positive socio-economic implications of biotech. And in the next line, I have also talked about this negative consequences. That however, the application of biotech and its related processes is not without its negative consequences. So this statement also indicates that I'm also going to dwell upon some of the negative implications of biotech. So that was the introduction. Basically, you just needed to define, mention some linking statements, and I think that was done. After that, you could have just moved on to the positive socio-economic implications of biotech. So in that section, I have talked about like 5 6 points. You could have picked any 3 4 and mentioned it. Especially in news, there are a lot of terms nowadays. For example, this white biotechnology, blue biotechnology, gray biotechnology. All of these are news, and if you could have just defined them and understood what those terms meant, I think those are pretty decent points for the applications part. I've started with agriculture. We again hear a lot about GM crops, like genetically modified crops, so better adaptability with stress resistance, pest resistance, herbicide resistance, etc. So we need all of these in less amount in case of a GM crop. Although there are some negatives, which we will again pick up in the negative implications, but in most cases we have like less use of fertilizers, pesticides, insecticides when we use GM crops. So that is a positive in case of agriculture, and also yield is increased. So this will ensure food and fiber security. So I have also used an example of BT cotton. Next, I have moved on to nutrition security. This is also a very important point, as biofortification is in use pretty much. Even in like basic staple food, for example, rice, we use biofortification. So biofortified foods can ensure nutrient security. You could have again mentioned two, three examples. I have taken the example of tomatoes with fish gene. Next is white biotechnology. It uses the tools of enzymes and microorganisms for applications in various industries. For example, animal feeds, food, paper, pulp, textiles, cosmetics, etc. Just one thing, guys, be sure to include some of the examples to show that the implications are actually in use. Next, I've talked about this blue biotechnology. This relates with aquaculture and all. So it plays a major role in augmenting economic opportunities associated with aquaculture. It ensures disease resistance, environmental sustainability, high quality fish foods, etc. Next is about gene therapy. This is also pretty much in news. Even in prelims, they ask questions on this. So gene therapy is genetic diseases which otherwise only have symptomatic treatment can be cured using biotechnology interventions. Example, thalassemia. Next is about pharma. So pharmaceuticals, microbes can be modified to yield industry level pharmaceuticals such as antibiotics, insulin, etc. Next is about energy security, biotechnological intervention through modified bacteria such as methanogens in biogas production or those in biofuel production. So this also makes us like emit less carbon. So it helps us in meeting our carbon goals, and this also helps in this energy security thing. So all of these were good points, and you could have mentioned any 4 5 out of this, whichever you wanted to. And these were pretty also generic points. Like you must have heard about most of these things, so it was nothing like you had to innovate a lot or something like that. So next we move on to the negatives of the this implications of biotech. So biotechnology has proved to be an enabler in various fields. However, it also presents a set of unique socio-economic challenges. So in the challenges, we can talk about this CRISPR technology, like what we are seeing, especially like in China. There was in news recently that parents are using this technology to create designer babies, which can be very unethical. Because if we start creating designer babies, so that is like a violation of a lot of rights, including something like right to privacy and all. So that is pretty unethical, and it is also a human rights issue. So I mentioned about that. Next, we can move on to talking about biopiracy. Now, biopiracy leads to unauthorized appropriation of knowledge and genetic resources of farming and indigenous communities. In India, also, we see forms of biopiracy. For example, these tribal communities and their knowledge of forests are used by foreign companies and multinational companies in order to make medicines and all. So, that is also a form of biopiracy, which you could have mentioned. Next, we have uh, also this results into what like economic disadvantage for the indigenous community. So this is also a pretty socio-economic issue. Next, we have moved on to after biopiracy, we can talk about this GM crops again. As I told you in the first part itself, that GM crops may be better, but it can transfer genetic material into natural unmodified plants, and there is a concern about the uncertainty of GM crops on long-term effects on health and biodiversity. So this is not clear. Like in India, also we are not using GM crops on a large scale. Only BT cotton and some other crops have just been like authorized. We have the country has authorized only some of these crops. Otherwise, we would have been producing on a large scale if it would have been like pretty beneficial. So social hierarchy. Next, I have talked about this social hierarchy thing, that it can be formed as gene therapies and personalized medicines are costly and can be afforded only by the super rich. So if we just like use biotech for medicinal purposes, like it is pretty costly therapies, and like the rich section of the society will have an advantage over the poorer section, because the out of pocket expenditure for the poor will be pretty large, and I don't think they will be affording it. So that might create a social hierarchy. Next is about bioterrorism. Bioterrorism is highly possible when such a technology is mastered by rogue states or organizations. Now, like non-state actors, even like the terrorist organizations can use biotechnology to propagate this bioterrorism, which can be a very potent form of attack. Now, it is also termed as playing with nature. Example with creation of transgenic plants and animals as a three-legged mouse. Such activities, though look innocuous, may have disastrous consequences for biological viability in the future. Now, nature has a certain way of uh, creating the society and sustaining it. So, if we start like invading into the nature's ways, it might be very unfruitful for us and basically be disastrous for us. So that is a point of caution in using these new biotech applications. Next, for clinical trials of such technology which poses a high risk of mutation and even death, the volunteers are mostly people from lower strata of socio-economic hierarchy. Now, whenever we see the clinical trials of major diseases, for which like in Western countries, they take people from African countries or even Asian countries for these clinical trials and take signatures from them and consent from them over it. But since these guys are poor, they give the consent, but this can put these communities at risk, and that is not pretty what much ethical, which should be done. So that also creates a lower strata of socio-economic hierarchy. So you can talk about clinical trials also. So that was pretty much it. So you could have just mentioned some of the most important points, like negatives for GM crops, playing with nature, biopiracy, bioterrorism, clinical trials. Any 4 5 out of these could have been useful enough for writing the negative points. Next, since I have not mentioned a way forward here, again due to already a lot of content is there, so I don't think I would have got that much space to write about way forward. But still, if you could if you wanted, you could have just drawn a flow chart and mentioned some 2 3 points about way forward, how to just generic points like judicious use of the technology and forming a universal consensus, like global bodies should come together and decide what all to do and what where all to stop. So these things you could have mentioned in the way forward. I have just tried to integrate some of those points in my conclusion itself, so that can also be done if you wanted to, and if you had loss of limitations of space and time. So biotechnology is thus a disruptive tool with revolutionary implications. Countries have to come together to form an international set of rules, standards based on ethical principles to ensure judicious and just use of the technology for the benefit of humanity as well as Mother Earth. So just again, this is basically just an optimistic way forward type of statement. Like, we need an international set of rules and we need to ensure that we reap the benefits of biotech judiciously. So that was pretty much it for today's question, and I think most of you guys have written along these lines only. Some in some copies content is lacking a bit, so I think if you just read on the topic and go through some of the points, I think you will be well placed to write a simple answer like this and get some good marks. Now let us move to the copies for today. The copies you have posted, I have taken some of them and we will try to evaluate and give you the feedback for those answers. First, we move to Vivek's copy. Good evening, Vivek. Good evening, Chatrali. So, uh, Vivek has started on a good note. Like, biotech refers to utilization of biological systems to create different products. There has been rapid increase in biotech R&D in India since 1970s Green Revolution period. However, there are certain advantages and disadvantages of it. So, Vivek, like, you did not need not write about India here because this was a science and tech question. So it was not specific to India. It was just about biotech. So more, you could have just talk more broadly, like about biotech only. On the world level, biotech has been taking rapid strides, including India. So it is not just India to be specifically mentioned. However, you could have mentioned, but I think it will be better to avoid it. This line is fine, and so advantage disadvantage also a decent linking statement which you could have used. Applications of, you could have just instead of this line you could have just mentioned some examples of biotech, white biotech, red biotech, green biotech. So those things you could have mentioned if you wanted to. Otherwise, first and third line is also a decent introduction, I think. Applications of biotech: GM crops for agriculture, therapeutics, energy production through blue green algae, waste treatment through bioremediation, etc. Okay. So like this thing you could have mentioned in the introduction. This was a decent enough example from example point of view. After that, you could have in the content, you could have body part, you could have just moved on to the implications. Social implications, you have gone on for a table like positives and negatives. So this is also a good approach. Socio and economic you have differentiated. Let us see what are the points that you have written in both the parts. So, positive development of new medicines, vaccines, etc., has significantly benefited human society. So, this is good. Food fortification also is fine, like I have talked about that. Increased life expectancy at birth and reduced mortality. So, I think, but this is not exactly due to biotechnology because there you might link it, but I think this should not be the main point because life expectancy and reduced mortality is due to overall improvement in medical standards, I will say, helped in creation of healthy human workforce, etc. So these are a bit generic points. You can go for being more specific about some of the points. For example, you can talk about energy security. You can talk about environmental. Again, just yesterday as I had mentioned, you can always think about from an environment perspective how it can be helpful and all. So you could have mentioned those things. Despite production of transgenic crops, the long-term consequences are not known to scientists yet. This is fine. Some GM crops demand high consumption of pesticide, fertilizer, etc., which can lead to biomagnification in human body. So I don't think this is decent, but you can just integrate these 2 points into one only because you have just written the same thing about same point, explained it in 2 points. Clinical trials on humans and animals for new medicines, vaccines, etc., has been criticized. So this is good. Ecological imbalance, loss of biodiversity, that is pest-resistant crop, potential threat of bioterrorism, development of gene-targeted weapons. Okay, laboratory tests sometimes leads to disaster, pandemic, extra leakage. Okay, so this is good. You can also talk about, I will say, designer babies and all. So those are also ethical issues and social issues also, so you can mention those things here. Otherwise the points and the presentation is decent enough. Economic implications are increased yield of food crops has contributed to food security and economic growth. This is fine. Improved breeds of buffalo, cow, goats, this is also decent. Development of drought resistant crops has improved optimum land use pattern of India, but we don't okay, you can write this, but I think again there's too much focus on crops only. So I think you can just use it in this one. Integrate in point number one only. Increased input cost of farmers, that is seeds of GM crop of current year can't be used next year. This is fine. Accelerated economic exploitation of resources, that is biodiversity. Okay. So I think what has happened is like since you have differentiated the social and economic part, you are trying to innovate points in this economic implications. But I think you could have avoided it overall. Just mention socio-economic, positive socio-economic and negative socio-economic. Socio-economic is a single word basically, so you can no need to go into such details like differentiating social and differentiating economic. You could have just mentioned one table and talked about the positives and negatives. I think in that way you could have gone for more broader points and dimensions of your points could have also been increased. So biotech has contributed significantly to human needs. However, its negative aspects needs to be minimized with more focus on its long-term consequences. So this is fine, okay, but way forward, a bit more optimistic, like forming a global consensus and all. Could have mentioned, could have mentioned that here, or you could have just drawn a flow chart and mentioned a brief way forward. So overall, this is answer is fine. Like you have got the content okay, but there is a bit of repetition in the answer. Like you're focused too much on GM crops, and same thing almost like 3 4 points you have in some way or the other you have mentioned it. Otherwise, it is fine. Overall, I think you will get 4 out of 10 in this answer, Vivek. Next, we move to Puja's copy. UN Convention on Biological Diversity, UNCBD, defines biotechnology as technological application that uses biological systems. Okay, so this is fine. Biotechnology, a revolutionary intervention. It has helped improve food quality in processing and manufacturing. Simple proteins and cells could be manipulated to produce chemicals. So try to give examples here when you are making such a point. Try to include some examples, Puja. Biotechnology is also used to create more efficient fuels, cure infectious diseases, and increase farming yields to feed more people. This is fine. Applications of biotech include therapeutics, diagnostics, GM crops for agriculture, bioremediation, waste treatment, energy production, etc. So you can be a bit smart and use these points in a better way. For example, you can use energy production as a single point, and you can use this. For example, you have talked about crops here, so I think try to differentiate these and make use of the points in a better manner. Applications of biotechnology types: blue, green, red, white. Okay, so try to explain a bit what is blue, what is green, what is red, what is white. Biotechnological evolution transforming economic societies by its innovation. So this point is again not needed because this is nothing like nothing new is claimed here. You have mentioned about it in introduction itself, and the question itself makes it pretty clear that it is a revolutionary intervention. So you have just started by saying that biotech is a revolutionary intervention. So try to give more concrete points. Use your points in a smarter way. Try to use more examples. For example, give one point on agriculture. Talk about blue biotech in another point. Talk about green biotech in another point. Talk about the environment, how biotech can use in reducing our like carbon production on all of those in other points. So you can that those will give you like 4 or 5 good concrete points. So you can use that in a better way rather than using such generic statements. These statements mostly try to use in introduction and conclusion and all. Don't try to use just rhetoric type statements in the body of your answer. Next, socio-economic impacts of biotechnology. Okay, India is among top 12 biotech destinations in the world, ranked third in Asia Pacific. World ranked third in Asia Pacific region. India has emerged as leading destination for clinical trials. So this question was not about India, so you could have just omitted this. Just talk about clinical trials, benefits of clinical trials, or like negatives of clinical trials. Those are the impacts of biotech. So it is not asking you to analyze in the context of India. So you could have avoided talking about India in such detail here. Biotechnology can usher in second green revolution with unprecedented opportunities to ensure food security along with economic well-being of farmer. So again, this is repetition of points. You have talked about food security and farmer, I guess, here only. For example, increase farming yields to feed more people. This is basically food security only, and so improve food quality and processing and manufacturing. So try to don't try to repeat points. Basically, just go for a structure and follow that. Otherwise, as I have told you, like try to pick the subheadings from the question itself. Here you had just to write the mixed socio-economic implications. So you just needed to define the biotech first, then give some examples, then talk about the positive socio-economic implications, then talk about the negative ones, and then go for the conclusion. So I don't know why you have first tried to talk so much about being it a revolutionary intervention and then gone separately for socio-economic impacts. So I think there you have done a mistake. You could have just gone for the positives and negatives, as the mixed word was pretty clear in the question itself. But overall, this is fine. Like your content is decent enough. You have the points. You know what all is happening around the world. You know about biotech. All of that is fine. But presentation of this answer can be improved like few notches if you stop repeating the points and if you go follow the flow of the question. I think biotech techniques are used in medicine for diagnosis and okay. So again, same things are repeated a bit. So I think that if you avoid that and go in a structured manner, this answer will be better. Thus, application of biotech could be a major tool for development in all countries. Biotechnology could be utilized in solving future problems like food and water insecurity. So this conclusion is decent enough. Intro conclusion is good, but I think the structuring of this answer could be better. Go for writing positives and negatives separately and try to reduce the repetition of points. That will be the basic feedback for your answer. I think you will get 3 marks out of 10 for this answer, Puja, because the content needs a bit of improvement in this answer. Next, we move to Ranu's copy. Biotechnology is technology that utilizes biological systems living on parts of this to develop or create different products. This is fine. Traditional processes usually utilize the living organism in the natural form, while the modern form is generally involving more advanced modification of the biological system or organism. This is also okay. But don't you think that this definition has been like extended a bit? Don't you know need not to make it complex because right definitions that you will be able to retain in the exam hall and present it there. So I think this first line is fine. Then you could have just gone on for giving some examples. That would have been a better, simple, and crisp definition. Otherwise, this is also fine if you can reproduce it in the same pattern in the exam hall. Applications of biotech, GM crops is fine, BT cotton okay, enhancing nutritional value, gene therapy is also okay, molecular diagnosis for effective treatment okay, CRISPR tech tool for genome editing, transgenic by introducing genes from other species to study the biological effects, example okay, vaccine safety, testing safety of vaccines on transgenic mice, alternative or conventional farming, pharmacogenomics, okay, bioremediation is also fine. Biofuels is also okay. So I think one of the main things missing is in this answer is like you have extended basically the introduction. I will say most of these points are good, like your content is very fine, again you know what is happening in biotech, but try to again divide it into two parts. For example, talk about the positives, what all are positives, like this CRISPR also has positives, also has negatives. So just if you mention tool for genome editing, it will just be an example of biotech, but the question is not just asking the example, it is talking about the mixed socio-economic implications, or you can say the socio-economic impacts. So you can talk about how the impacts are mixed, you can talk about the positives as well as the negatives. So I think that is missing in this answer, otherwise your knowledge of biotechnology is fine. And again, this part was not needed, biotechnology in India was not asked, so I think you could have avoided this. Utility in public health and nutrition. Okay, so this is basically a type of way forward, but I don't know why you have uh, broadened, like narrowed it down to public health and nutrition. Nowhere it is asked that you need to show the utility in public health and nutrition. You could have avoided this. Just could have gone for a broader way forward. Application of biotechnology could be a major tool for development in all countries entwined with culture and socio-ethical values. Biotechnology could be utilized in solving future problems like food and water insecurity that impede national development and threaten peace in the developing world. So this is also fine. Intro conclusion again is good, Ranu, but I think the negatives you have not mentioned. So that will certainly lead to loss of some marks because the question clearly is asking about mixed impacts. And also, I don't know why you have narrowed down the scope here to public health and nutrition. And also, I don't know why you have talked about biotech in India because these things are not asked. You could have just gone for a way forward. So 3 out of 10 is what you will get for this answer because some of the core demands of the question is missing in this answer, I will say. Next, we move to Sachi's copy. According to the United Nations Convention, okay, biotech is the technological application of biological systems. Fine. Biotech conventional models, so fine. So Ranu, you have also tried to do the same thing, I'll say, but you can take a cue from here and do it like this because what this does is like this is pretty presentable, looks good, and the examiner also can understand what you want to convey without reading much. So if you reduce the effort of the examiner in reading or like going through your answer, it will certainly lead to some improvement in your marks. So try to do that wherever possible. It has proved to be a revolutionary intervention. Fine. In health sector, okay, 1980s agriculture. So again, you have, I don't know, I think you have gone on for talking about revolutionary intervention in the context of India. So that can be avoided, not required. However, we have seen a mixed impact of vaccine. Okay, let us move on to the impacts. Positive impact is agriculture, medicine, this is all are fine. Examples are mentioned, so this is good. Industry, better quality of quantity of pharma drugs, example, immobilized enzymes, environment, pollution control, alternative pesticides is fine. So, ठीक है, these points are good, I will say. And थोड़ा सा if you could have reduced like this thing, if you could have avoided talking about this specific evolution of biotech, then I think you could have increased some of the points here. Otherwise, also still better than most of the answers like till now. Negative impacts: privacy with genome deciphering information on future health will be public. So here you can again talk about the ethical and human rights issues like designer babies and all. Societal artificial genes in environment will alter the natural progression. So this is okay. Bioterrorism is also fine. High risk of failure, affordability concerns. Okay. So again, uh, the PDF that I have shown you in the beginning, if you could include some of the points from there, like increase some of the content of your answer, talk about some more dimensions, it will be better. Otherwise, also structuring of the answer is fine, and also you have understood what the question is asking. So that is a positive in this answer. Keeping the concerns in mind, further progression is needed so India can extract the most out of its present position of the 12th largest biotechnology market to emerge a leader. Okay, in conclusion, you can talk about be a bit India specific, but overall, this question was just from the purely from the perspective of science and tech, and purely from the perspective of biotech. So you could have kept it a bit more broader. The conclusion part. So Sachi, I think still it is a pretty decent answer. You will get at least 4 out of 10 in this answers. Next, we move to Nisha's copy. Biotechnology is technology that utilizes biological systems living on the parts of this to develop or create different products. Okay. So this is fine. Nisha, one thing I will say, you can just try to write in more straighter lines if you can. Your answer sometimes goes tilts a bit, so you can try slowly practice that, and I think it will be okay with time. But still, it is fine. Biotechnological revolutionary step. Okay, fine. GM crops alternative one. Non-conventional farming. Okay. BT cotton. Genetically modified biopesticides. Okay, fine. Gene therapy. Genetically modified organisms helps to reduce post-harvest losses. CRISPR technology is fine. Transgenic animals is also fine. So this is decent enough, but I think again this could have, you have taken a lot of space for writing this. Just use example and give two or three or four words, and I think that should be it. Next, focus on the main part of the main demand of the question. Like, let us see what you have written here. Positives, foundation stone for different sectors. Example: agri-tech, health tech, knowledge economy, easy to scale up, sustainability, food security, mass production, growth, employment. So you have written points, but I think these points are very, very generic. You need to mention some examples like knowledge economy, easy to scale up. How you need to show how. Give some examples here. Sustainability, tools for a better environment. So sustainability, this point can be written in almost 10 topics. So try to give bring some core biotech perspective in it, like give the example of some of the biofuels or methanogens which help us in climate change, tackling climate change, so that will make the examiner understand that you understand the applications of biotechnology exactly. Otherwise, like just mentioning sustainability, knowledge economy is easy to scale up is not it is not very uh, pinpoint. So you can do that. Food security, again, mass production. How? Like GM crops have positives, but they have negatives also. We have just like BT cotton is the only crop that is like uh, we are continuing producing. So how does it ensure food security? You need to like dwell upon it a bit, right? Two three lines. Give some examples. You can take examples from other countries also, not necessarily from India only, and that will make the answer a bit better. Economic growth, employment generation. Again, how economic growth, employment generation is a thing that you can write in hundreds of answers. So you just need to be a bit better in when you are writing about the main issue, main demand of the answer. Negatives: harm to the environment, introduction of more pesticides. This is fine. Bioterrorism is fine. So here, you can say that you have understood. Again, examples would be good, but still it is good. Ethical issues is also fine. You can talk about clinical trials and all here. Production safety, concerns about technician safety in laboratories. Okay, fine. Biotechnology is a coin which has two facets, positive and negatives. For getting maximum benefits, we need to minimize its bad effects by regulations. Okay, conclusion is fine, but I think this table was the main core demand of the question. So you could have just talked a bit more specifically about these politics, socio-economic politics, because these are pretty generic points. What you could have done is reduce the number of examples here, taken these talked about CRISPR technology and written what are the positives for this in that table itself. You could have talked about GM crops and talked about its positives in that table itself. You could have talked about different types of biotech like blue biotech, gray biotech and all. You could have mentioned those and briefly written small statements about what they are and how they are helping us. So that would have been a bit better. So I think you need to work a bit upon the content. Otherwise, the presentation and the structuring of the answer is pretty fine, Nisha. So I think you will get 3 out of 10 for this answer. Next, we move to Manu Jansu's copy. Biotechnology uses biological systems and living organisms to improve human life. With its applications across various sectors, it is seen as revolutionary intervention, but it is also okay, fine. So revolutionary interventions is okay. Gray biotech, biolock technology, bioplastics, restoration of ecosystems, bioremediation is fine. Vaccine tech, gene editing, bio. So this is good. Some of the examples are mentioned, but again, let me see whether you have written positives and negatives well or not. Green, genetic modification, okay. Supercharged biotech, biochemicals, microplastic catalysts, blue biotech is also fine. However, applications of biotechnology are both positive and negative. Okay, fine. Socio-economic implications, improvement in health and lifestyle, increased life expectancy, plus reduced mortality, pharmaceuticals and pathology, vaccine technology, stem cell therapy. Okay, fine. Ensures food security, biofortification, HYV seeds, etc. You can give some examples here. Try to So what you can do is make this part short and use these examples in your next part. When you write a point, use examples from these things, examples from these parts to explain your points here. And the first part itself could be reduced a bit. So ensures food security is fine, economic growth, boost to R&D innovation, employment generation, energy security is fine, biofuels, again, you can give some examples of biofuels and all. Governance, DNA fingerprinting and forensics, biometrics, etc. is fine. Negative environmental dimension, have you mentioned? No. So you could have talked about a bit about energy security and environmental dimension here in this part also. Negatives, environmental degradation, invasive alien species, soil degradation, increased toxicity, okay. Ethical issues is fine. Mentioned, you could have mentioned CRISPR-Cas9 here. Marburg, Ebola is also good. Security concern, bioterrorism is warfare, pandemic. Fine, technology can be a boon or bane for society depending on the way we use it. Thus, high ethical standards are required to ensure productive and pragmatic use of advanced technology. So this is a decent attempt, especially the answer is pretty much content rich, I will say. Uh, just a few points like you could have reduced some of the examples here. So much of this was not written and tried to was not required, and you could have just used some examples to explain your points in the next part in a bit better way. Like you could have used examples whenever you were talking about a certain point, and you could have increased some of the dimensions here only, because the question's main focus was on socio-economic implications. All of this will count in introduction. So introduction, one page introduction is a bit big. So you could have just finished it in almost half a page and then gone on for writing the socio-economic implications. Otherwise, the content-wise, your answers pretty rich. I think you have included many things, and all of them are quite relevant. So I will say that you will get 4.5 out of 10 in this answer, Manoj Anshu. So that is it for today, guys. Again, keep writing and keep posting your answers. I will again come back tomorrow with a new set of copies and try to give the feedback on a new set of topic. Meanwhile, if you have any doubts, you can ask. Good evening, Subhankar. Sir, where I get PDF of your answers. Chetrali, I don't share the PDF right now, but I'll share it if you guys want in the Telegram group. So I'll post it in the Telegram group. If you want the PDF, I will share it there. So that will be it for today, guys. Again, there will be a night owl discussion in the evening, so try participating in that. And again, tomorrow we will come with a new topic, and we will discuss the evaluation and feedback of that topic in the evening around 7 p.m. And again, keep writing, keep peer reviewing your answers. I think peer reviewing is also a very good process through which you can keep on learning, and also try to include some of the points. For example, those guys who are lacking in content can use some points from this answer, this Manujansu's answer, and paste it in your word notes or copy there in your word notes and keep it handy for writing whenever a question on biotechnology comes next time, or whenever you face it in any other exam. So that will be it for today. Thank you very much, guys, and we will meet again tomorrow. So bye bye and have a good progress in answer writing. Thank you very